Welcome to the Missadventures with Allison Mott, the show about finding your own way and finding the humor in every misstep. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share. Welcome to the Missadventures with Allison Mott. This is episode 4, and today we are going to talk about travel. So it's one of my favorite things. And as somebody who travels a lot, I think that's, really, if you think about the name Missadventures, this is where it is, right? Like they're adventures and there are a lot of misses on it. So the content or my story ideas for this, I was just like kept going and I'm like, that's too many. That's too many. And a lot of them are just like one off. And I'm like, okay, outline these, put these together. But yeah, so I've always been a traveler, right? My first plane ride, I think I was like 6 weeks old because my grandparents both lived in different states than where I was raised. So we traveled all the time back and forth. My grandparents lived in Florida, my mom's parents. And so, and my dad's parents lived in Pennsylvania. We'd fly to both those places, especially as a baby. So I've been flying my entire life, traveling. Always had a very special place in my heart for it. And I will say the more stressful things can kind of be in Kansas City, right? Running an entire company, having staff. Sometimes it's hard to actually unplug and walk away, but it is so important to my mental health. Like I feel like every time I leave, I just like shift the energy dramatically. And I'm sure that it's nice for like my team here, right? Because I've asked, I'm like, how is it when I was gone? And it's like, the stressful stuff is here when I'm here, right? So like big decisions can't be made without me. People, they're like, oh, we'll have to wait for Allison's back. And if people freak out, they freak out. But usually they're like, well, it's just waiting for you on the other side. So yeah, I can just like feel a dramatic difference in my mental health as well as just the energy every time I go. And I honestly am a person who likes to adventure, let's say do it for the plot, if you will, whether it works out well for me or not. So even if the adventure is like, well, that seems risky, I'm like, yeah. Like I recently went and visited. So it actually worked out really perfectly. Just one of those like kismet things. But a friend of mine who had met once through a mutual friend was staying on Long Beach, New York. So she had like a little beach condo and she was going to be gone for the 4th of July weekend. She put it on Instagram, was like, hey, it's going to be super affordable. Does anyone want to sub rent from me? I message her. We figured out there was a great match. I was going to take care of her. You know, she really trusted me to take care of her place. But then her dog sitter wasn't going to be available. So she basically offered for me to come stay for free if I watched her senior wiener dog. And I'm like, I've never been more qualified for a job in my life. I take care of a senior weenie every single day. So this is perfect, sending her pictures. And she's like, oh my gosh. So I literally flew to New York, went and stayed on Long Beach for the week, hung out with a senior wiener dog named Wilson and made him some very fun songs while we went on walks, little Willie boy, you know. And I was like, honestly, when I was there, I was like, I wouldn't want to be here without this dog. Like me and this dog are bonded. He made my trip. It was so fun. But it was so funny because someone asked me the week before, they were like, yeah, but like, what's the address? Because they were telling me to go somewhere. So they sent me the address of that. They're like, well, how far away are you? Like, what's the address of where you're staying? This is like 3 days before I leave. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea. Like, how did you don't know where you're going? And I'm like, no, I know the city. And they're like, how long have you known this person that you're house sitting for? I'm like, a weekend. I met her on a bachelorette trip and I trust her. And they're like, oh, okay. And this one actually did turn out amazing. So this is not one of my misadventures, but these are just kind of the things that I say yes to. And then I do it for the plot and figure it out later. So that was a great trip. But okay. So one of my most epic of epic fails that we like the entire time this trip was happening, we were like, this needs to be a movie. Like there's no way it doesn't need to be a movie. This was back in like 2014, I want to say. So yeah, almost a decade ago. Yeah, because it would have been my 26th birthday. Wow. That's crazy. So a good buddy of ours, there was 4 of us, and a good buddy of ours from college was going to get married in South Carolina. and no, wait, North Carolina. So we were all going to fly out there. So there's 4 of us. We're going to fly out there, attend this friend's wedding. One of our friends was a groomsman in the wedding. Then I was like, if we're flying all the way out there and it's my birthday's like 2 days later, we should go to Myrtle Beach. It's just like a couple hour drive from there, spend a couple days in Myrtle Beach, fly back out. So we decided this was the plan. I would say our most irresponsible friend at the time booked the whole trip, did it all through Expedia, didn't buy travels insurance, just picked the cheapest of flights. So yeah, I turned 26. So I was 25. We were all having a really good time at that point in our life. So we had to leave their house by like 3 a.m., right, to get to the airport for a 6 a.m. flight. And we were all like, no, we're not drinking tonight. We are not drinking tonight the night before because that would be silly. We have to be up so early. And then we were like, but we're on vacation. So obviously one thing turned to another. We raged it, overslept, missed our flight. We got there on time, but we had to check bags and they like refused to acknowledge our presence at the desk. And we're like, so we missed our flight. We're like, okay. So because we booked on Expedia, the airline would not honor, we were out the money. They would not honor, they would not rebook. All of these lessons being learned the hard way. So we could not get another plane ride. And to do a day of, again, 25 years old, all living paycheck to paycheck at the best, right? Like that's the max we have. So we're like, we cannot afford to buy another day of plane ticket. We have a groomsman though with us. All the hotels are paid for, rental cars are paid for. Like we're the only thing keeping us from all of these things. And also you can't miss your buddy's wedding. Like you're in it. So we're just trying to figure out what we're going to do. We had a rental car in, I think it was Raleigh or Charlotte. We flew in and out of one. I can't remember which one it was. We had a rental car there and we're like, so all we got to do is get there and then everything's paid for. How do we get there? So we come up with this brilliant plan and we're like, let's rent a car, a one-way trip in Kansas City and get there. We're like, okay, this is going to be, this is like, I think this was like a Thursday and we all got paid on that Saturday or Sunday. So we're all about as broke as a 25-year-old can be, $0 in our bank account. Like, okay, I think I was going to get paid the next day. So I was like a day before them, but we're all like, what can we do with 5 quarters? Like, how can we get there? I mean, just broke as a joke. So we finally call around and we find a rental car company in Kansas City who's like, yep, we have cars. My buddy gets a discount through his work for them. We're like, I guess this is what's happening. We're driving home. We're going to get a rental car. We're going to pack up and we're going to drive to this guy's. We're going to drive to the city that we have a rental car in. So we call the rental car company and we're like, hey, so again, the friend who booked everything, and I listened to her make the call, so I know that it really happened. She calls and tells them, we've been delayed. We're going to get in around 1 a.m. Like very realistic with everything is like, they're like, we'll hold the car for you. We're like, great. Da, 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 da. She didn't get a name and number because she had the whole conversation, right? They were going to hold the car. Like we thought everything was good. So we go up to Hertz at Crown Center to rent the car. And we're like, hey, this is what we need. We booked it online and they're like, oh yeah, that's through corporate. They don't know what cars we have. We don't have this size car. And I'm like, what car do you have? Because like everywhere else in the city is like sold out of cars. And they're like, we have one car that's available and it is a Chevy Aveo. Think of a Ford Fiat, right? Like it is the smallest 4-door car with a 10-gallon tank of gas. Like that. And one of my friends is 6'5". He is a 6'5" male. The other girl that we're traveling with is like 5'10". My other friend is like 6'1". I'm coming in at 5'5", the shortest we got. And we're like, well, at least show us the car, dude. Can you show us the car? He takes us out to the parking garage. We look at it. I'm like, just pop the trunk. I just want to know if all of our stuff will fit in. We'll fit in the car fine. We'll figure this out. We're like, yep, we'll take it. We literally had 10-gallon tank of gas. We had to stop like every hour and a half to get gas. Like it was just like, okay, like it was a comedy of errors every single step along the way. Us pulling back up, it was just me and Trey went to go get the car. We agreed to all of this. Had to get like a credit check to like rent it because we didn't have credit cards yet. We only had debit cards. They were like, it might affect your credit score. I was like, at this point, you can have my left finger. I don't care. Just like, let me take the car, dude. So we pull back up to the driveway with our friend who's 6'5" and, a 5'2", like pretty tall female. And they just look at us and they're like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, This is what we get. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. Get in the damn car. Pack your damn bag. So we drove straight through. And of course, we hit the Rocky Mountains at 2 a.m. And we didn't sleep. Like, we drove through the night.
Taking turns?
Yes, except two of the people didn't really hold up to their end of the bargain. So then two of us drove through the whole damn thing. So Rocky Mountains, 2 a.m., pitch black, semis. If you've ever driven through the Rocky Mountains, or not, sorry, not Rocky Mountains. Oh, Smoky Mountains. Smoky Mountains, my bad. So like through Tennessee, that like just in this like tiny clown car that gets yep. Oh, yeah, it was. So we get to where the next rental car is available.
How far was this drive, by the way?
I honestly feel like it was like 20 hours. I don't know. But we drove straight through. Like, we should have slept, and we just kept trading off drivers because by this point we had to get to this wedding, and the wedding was happening like the next day. So we were like, we don't have time to sleep. So we drove to where the rental car place is. This is where it gets really interesting. We show up at 6 a.m. Yeah. Okay. So it must have been because I think we finally got to leave midday. So it must have been about 20, 24 hours to drive us through. So with all the fucking stops for gas, because we couldn't go that far. So, and of course we're like texting the groom on the way, and he's stressed, and we're like, we're going to get there, buddy. We're on our way. So we get to the rental car place, and the woman at the counter, which if you've ever dealt with rental car places, I hate them. I think they're a joke. I think that they like just say whatever they want. They can make their own rules. And you're like, no, so basically we explained everything that's happened. We know that we were delayed, that we called, She's like, I have no record of this. I have no record of you guys calling. We're like, okay, well, we did. Like, we have the actual conversation. She's like, well, who'd you speak to? And we're like, we didn't know we needed the proof that we had this conversation with you. And we like explained everything that happened, all of this. They're like, no. And you also booked through Expedia. So you don't have a car with us, and we already gave it away, and you lost your deposit. Like, you lost all your money. You've paid hundreds of dollars for this car, and you don't get one. And at this point, now I used my only money to get us the car to get there before I'm paid. Like, we're broke as a joke, right? Like, that's all that there is. And we're like, okay. So we're sitting in, is it Charlotte or Raleigh? I will never remember. I mean, I guess I could look it up, but how would I even look it up? I don't have the receipts for this trip. But so we're sitting there in this, like, kind of arguing, being really kind to this woman because we're just exhausted, right? And like at wit's end. And she's like, nope, you've lost all the money. There's no car. I've got nothing else to rent you. Like, I guess if you want to pay another couple $100, I can get you a new car. We're like, no, we don't really have that as an option. Like, we just returned the one-way rental that we overpaid for to the, like, we need a car right now. She is not going to give us a car. Like, with 100% certainty, she's done. She said she could get fired if she gives us the car, So the guys are like, we're all just kind of at wit's end. Like, what do? We have this bride, or the groomsman. In true Allison fashion, I was like, I think I have one play here. I think I just cry. Like, I think I just gotta be crazy. So I just literally sat down in the middle of this $1 rent-a-car, popped a squat, and just started fake crying. I was like, we have the groomsmen and the wedding's gonna be ruined. Just as dramatic as possible. The girl that I'm with gets what I'm doing, right? She knows me well enough to be like, oh, we're playing a game. Noted. So she sits down with me. We're just crying at 6 a.m. in the middle of a $1 rent-a-car. The two guys are like, what the fuck are they doing? And this woman is like mortified, right? And you can tell we're not leaving. Like, I'm not getting up. I'm like, listen, I've got one move. What are you going to do? Call security? Like, I can't live in this $1 rent-a-car. I need a car. And so yeah, after a little while of crying, she's like, oh my God, get off the floor. I'll give you the car. I'll give you the car. If I get fired for this is your fault. I'll give you the car. And I'm like, if you get fired for giving us the rental that we've right out paid for, like, you have a corporate policy problem, because this is insane. Like, we were delayed. This was a delayed flight. Like, what? So yeah, we ended up getting in the car. She actually was very sweet and upgraded us and gave us a bigger car because she saw what we drove it in. But yeah, and well, the best part of this too, she's like, I will have to honor the card you got on file. I'll give you the car that you've already booked, blah, 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 blah. But the girl who was the least responsible had booked it with her credit card. It had no money in it, but you have to have the deposit on the card on file or it truly is null and void. So we've gotten all the way to this point with this lady. Like, I cried on the floor. Like, I have put effort in here. So we call this girl's dad, who has access to her account, is in a completely different state, in a different time zone, hours before us. So it's 6 a.m. East Coast, right? It's 4 a.m. her dad's time zone. We have to call, because they also use a bank that doesn't have actual bank locations. It's an online bank only that her dad would have access to, is the only person that could get money in this account quick enough for us to rent this car. We have to wake up her dad at 4 a.m., not drunk or in trouble, but in a dollar rent-a-car, for him to put $250 in her account so that we can leave dollar rent-a-car. He does. God bless that man. Don't even know his name, but thank you so much.
Still be there if it wasn't.
We would still be there and I'd still be crying on the floor. We'd all just be employees. I don't know what would have happened to us. Oh my gosh. But like, the best part of when we woke up to fly home after this entire trip, we were up so early. We left like 3 hours before we were supposed to be there, or like even leave. We were like, we will sit in the airport. We will sit. And that is the last time I've ever even run close to being too early or not being early enough for a flight. Now I'm like, the 2-hour rule applies. I don't care if it's a Kansas City airport. I will be there 2 hours before. Okay. So yeah, that was our trip of getting there. We ended up driving then, because now we had a couple hours still, because he got married in like kind of like a remote location, right? Because he's military. So it was like near a base. So then we have a couple hour drive. We show up like the morning of his wedding, just like, hey. Oh, and we had called. This was the best part too. We had a hotel room, but we weren't going to use it. So we were like, let's call and cancel this first night so that we don't have to pay for something and we can get some of this money back. Well, we showed up at 8 a.m. to this place now, right? So like, you can't check in till 4. So we all 4 of us just pulled around back of this motel, rolled down the window, stuck our legs out, and just like passed out. And then finally the groom calls and is like, okay, I've finagled some things. People are out of their rooms, to do wedding things. Do you want to pass out in some of my family's room? So we had to drive to this other hotel, and then they let us crash in all of their beds. But he had a beautiful wedding, and my friend Josh was a groomsman in it. So we did get there. But just a true comedy of errors. I can't even think what else happened from there, but like, we went to Myrtle Beach, found out, not a fan. I will die on that hill. I know the beaches of Florida. I thought we were going to a beach and it was a southern beach. And I was like, no, thank you. Not for me. Thank you, Myrtle Beach. Yeah, it was an experience. So that was the first. Yeah, it just felt like every single thing we were like, okay, what do you got now? What you got now? So yeah, we were at the airport extremely early for the flight home. Yeah. Never chancing that again. Nothing new. This time I just took some people on that journey with me. They were a little resistant. They were a little reluctant to go. And I said, no, we'll be fine. We'll be bonded over this forever. But yeah, I'll never forget the look of pulling up in a Chevy Aveo to Josh, who's just towering over the car. Like, really? Like, yeah, really. Get in. We are here. Yeah. I also ended up in an urgent care one time while traveling. Okay. Here, there's a city that is in my heart, and I love it. And it just feels like it doesn't love me back. I don't know if that's a universal experience. Usually that happens with romantic partners, right? You're like, oh, I love you so much. And they're like, who is this? That is how this city feels about me, right? I'm like, Chicago, I love you. And it's like, new number, who dis? So yes, Chicago does not have the same lovely feelings that I have about it. And that is okay. But I really feel like it should, I don't know, give me another chance. But it's told me no several times. I'm like the desperate girl just calling for a hookup, like, Chicago, take me back. And it's like,
Just love me.
please stop calling. Soon it should block my number because it just, like, I honestly can't stop. But I've had really good trips there, and then all of a sudden it took a turn for the worst, and now I only have bad trips. I'm really hoping I think I can pull it back together, but I haven't planned a trip because, fool me once, something, fool me twice, something else. I'm not sure the saying. But I don't feel like you should give it a third chance to fool you. I'm not sure how that saying goes. But anyways, so a couple years ago, I wanted to take like a cutesy little holiday trip to Chicago prior to the holiday. So it was supposed to be like the couple days leading up to Christmas. And then I was going to fly and celebrate Christmas in another location, but just like do the holiday market, see like Chicago at Christmas time, right? I'm so excited. I'm going to do these 2 days. I'm going to go solo and just like see town, all of this. So this is the year of... This is 2022. So Christmas 2022. If you remember anything about Christmas 2022, it is the polar vortex, ice storm, Southwest meltdown. Southwest Airlines meltdown, shutdown, planes displaced everywhere. So I'm in Chicago. I'm having a really good time for about the first hour. First hour goes in. I also, during this trip, thought that it would be smart because like I didn't want to spend like holiday money like for like a hotel. So I booked more of like a hostel style hotel, but I had my own private room, but it was definitely just like a cheaper vibe. So the room I'm on was also on the exterior wall of a building. And the first night I did have to go down and get my room changed because it was so cold in Chicago that I could see my breath in my room. And in order to sleep the first night, I had to turn the shower on hot just to get the steam. And so then I like begged at the front. I was like, you have to get me a new room because I can't, like I couldn't, like my fingers were going numb. Like it was negative in my hotel
Did
room.
you cry on the floor?
No, but the bed was on the floor. Like I was like, this can't be correct. Is there missing a Spock? Why is it on the floor? Is this where the savings comes from? No heat and no bed board? Like what? They did give me a different room, which was very nice, but I learned my lesson on trying to save money on a hotel room. That is not where you save money. So within like the first hour of being there, I'm going to the big department store, the Christmas market, get a text from Southwest. Hey, your flight's been canceled. I'm like, and this was before the Southwest meltdown. I'm like, shit. So I get another flight booked. I'm like, okay, we're good. Having anxiety spikes, going back and forth. I'm like, okay, we're good. Finally get it settled. I think it's day 2. I can't even really remember because the first was just kind of like kept being high anxiety. And I was like, I don't know why I just feel weird in my heart about this. Like I just feel odd. So I was doing one of my favorite things to do in Chicago is the river tours, right? So like it's the architecture scenic river tour. And I think it's so good. So if you're listening to this, do that. Anytime you're in Chicago, it's worth the money. I've done it a million times. I love it every single time. It's a great tour. You get the history. You can chill, have a glass of wine right around the river or the lake. I've done that one as well. So I'm going to do that one. It is just snowing. It is coming down so hard. And by the time we get back off of that boat, it is like pure blizzard. Can't see. The restaurant I'm supposed to have reservations at is texting me it's closing down for the night. Like all the restaurants in Chicago are closing. Like I like to travel and go to the gym when I'm traveling. I'm getting texts that they're closing down for the next couple days. Like that is... And then Chicago. So that has to be heavy snow for them to be like, not only are we canceling tomorrow, see ya next time. Don't come back this week. I'm like, holy shit. So I get back to my hotel. I went and go pick up like a pizza and go back to my hotel. And I'm like, all right, I'll just spend tonight like at the hotel. Tomorrow will be better. I am on a rolling flight cancellation. Every single time I get rebooked on a flight, it cancels. All night I'm watching this happen. And it's like, you've been rebooked. You've been canceled. You've been rebooked. You've been canceled. So the next day I'm like, I better just go to the airport. I have booked multiple concurrent flights at this point through like, so there's Chicago, O'Hare, and Midway. Through both airports I've booked. Like I am going to get out. At one point, I had so many Southwest flights that got canceled. I paid $1,000 to get first class on like a United, I think, because it was the only flight available that was going to go back to Kansas City. And it was at the other airport. I still have my other Southwest rolling cancellation going through Midway, but I actually get a first class ticket. Never flown first class in my life. I was like, well, you know what? This feels like the damn time. Also, I should say all rental cars in the city are sold out because everyone else is stuck too. Restaurants, hotels, everything's shutting down from the blizzards, right? So like Also, staying there over Christmas by myself in a hotel with no food, not my top option. I mean, I'm sure I could find food like but still not feeling great. Also, the hotel I left, I was so cold that like, so I finally get to O'Hare, get through security, get on the plane. We have boarded the plane. I'm like, holy shit, we're actually getting out of here. Like I'm actually leaving. Like this is happening. This is fucking happening. I get to leave Chicago. I didn't think this was going to happen. I mean, yeah, after those rolling flights of like just cancellation, every time you get hopes up, crushed. So, I mean, I'm chilling in first class, right? I'm like, I didn't get food at the airport because I knew that you'd get food in first class. So I was like, I'm not paying for food. I am going to take this seriously. Have a little phone charger. I'm propped up waiting for my flight to take off like the fancy motherfucker I am. So that's obviously not what happened. They're like, hey, we've got a problem de-icing the plane. So I did get to sit in first class for 2 hours while they tried to de-ice the plane, get everything going. Guess what? They got the plane de-iced. Bad news, pilots timed out of their hours. Flight canceled, get back off the plane. We have out in there for 2, and like, I got my money fully refunded. So I guess at least I got to sit in first class and charge my phone and be fancy. But at this point, I haven't eaten all day because I've been at the airport chasing stuff. Finally think I'm going to get food served to me in first class. So at this point, I don't even know what time it is, but I mean, we'd sat there all day. So I missed all the other, like no other flight had gone out. So like nothing's going on. I'm like, get off the plane. I'm like calling my mom hysterical. I'm like, I don't know what to do. It's the night before Christmas Eve. And I'm like, I can't get out. What hotel do I go to? Like, I genuinely don't know what to do at this point. Starving. My mom is like, okay, well, while this was all going, because I was able to text her right on the plane. She was like, I know this family in Chicago. I did my residency in Chicago. This was my roommate. I've texted her and her husband, who are my parents' age. So like 60s, they have adult children, like, my age as well, 30s. They said you can come stay with them. And I'm like, I don't know these people. Who the hell? What? She was like, well, what's your other options? And I'm like, well, tell them I'm on the way. Call me an Uber. So I have to go. And then at this point too, because they're like, the flight's canceled, they have to get all the bags back off. It takes another probably hour to 2 hours to get the bags back on the carousel. So they've told us the flight's canceled. I'm like another 2 hours waiting for the bag. Finally get the bag. Well, we were waiting in this line for the bag. And then all of a sudden we like look over after 2 and like they're on the carousel. We're like, nobody's announcing anything. We didn't know the state of chaos that it was in really because we were in the middle of it. So, and like at this time too, I'm looking at my other flight that would have gone through the other airport and it just keeps canceling. And it's like, you're booked for 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like, but am I? So I finally get my bag, call an Uber, go out all the way to Orland Park. So it's like an hour into the southern burbs of, or at least like the southern part of the city, Chicago. Walk in again, this family. I mean, I think they met me when I was a kid, but I obviously have no recollection of it. I walk in the door. It's this warm home of like this family that I like walk in the door and I'm so relieved to be out of the airport and in a warm place and like feeling instant love, hysteric tears, just break down in tears. Never met these people before. The dad takes one look at me, just gives me the biggest hug, which makes me cry even harder. And is like, I'll get you a grilled cheese and tomato soup. And I was like, okay. So he does that. They're like, do you need wine? I'm like, yeah, I do. I really do. So end up staying there. They're like, when's your next flight out? Like trying to work this. And I was like, well, technically the next flight is at 6 a.m., but I would have to leave in an hour to get back there. Right. Cause now it's like 1 a.m., midnight, 1 a.m., whatever. I'm like, I don't really feel like playing this game. I think I'm going to sleep and see if I can hit the 10 a.m. flight. The 6 a.m. flight was canceled anyway. So I wouldn't have known that. So like, but I finally like stopped playing the game and just like turned my phone. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to get a flight. None of the flights left. So ended up spending Christmas Eve. They let me borrow shoes, took me to the gym with them. Like I just stayed with this adorable couple that like just took me in like I was their own. Their adult children and their grandkids came over to celebrate Christmas. I stayed with them. They made me a room. They wrapped me for Christmas morning. They wrapped me up a candle and said, Santa must have known you are here and found you. And I was like, okay. So literally spent Christmas with absolute strangers who are like now my second parent. Like, I mean, at the time, right? I'm laying upstairs in this bedroom that feels like my middle school bedroom because I have a daughter my age and it was her middle school bedroom. So it still has like NSYNC posters, right? Like all of the very like growing up things. And I'm listening Christmas morning. I'm trying to stay up there so that their grandkids can have like Santa kid, like, Christmas morning without some strange lady they've met within 48 hours sitting at the table. Like, what else did you get, children? Ooh. So I'm like, I'm just going to stay up here until they're kind of done with that like family moment. And you're just feeling so low, right? Like you're feeling isolated and just like sad and devastated. And then you're just feeling sorry for yourself, right? Like instead of seeing the beauty in the fact that you now have this amazing second family that has just taken you in and loved you like they've known you forever. And then you go downstairs and get handed a present from Santa who knew that you were there, and you're like, okay. Oh.
Did you start crying again?
Yes. I mean, I try to pull it together because I'm also like sitting at the table like, thank you. Then like Christmas Day, and I finally was able to fly out. I got a flight home on Christmas night at 5:00. The dad drove me to the airport. And so sitting at the hotel bar, and at this point now I've just like got this like euphoric state because I'm like, well, you know what? At least if this one gets canceled, I've got turkey out of this. I'm like, I know they're gonna have it ready waiting for me. They were all sad to see me go. Now I'm their family. Like my favorite was when I borrowed her shoes and we all went to the community center the day before because they were like, got to get a pre-Christmas workout in. I was like, yes, please. So we like all went together as a family. So Christmas night, flying home and sitting at the airport bar, ended up drinking a whole dang bottle of wine because the flight kept getting delayed for hours. And I'm like, here it is. I'll text Mark and have him come get me, Daddy Dabrowski, come get me. So then they're like making announcements that they're trying to find a flight attendant and that the flight's going to be canceled unless they can find a spare flight attendant because the other flight attendant ran out of hours. And I'm like, there's no way. So I'm putting it on social media. I'm like, hey, this is where I'm at. Cause I've been like kind of just like keeping updates on it. And I'm like, if anyone could send Christmas magic, right? This Christmas night, everyone's at home with their families. And I'm like, please send me all the good vibes. I want to get home. But it was funny too, because when I was sitting at the bar, like everyone around me was in these awful moods. And for some reason, my mood just changed. And I was like, this is just funny. Like, what are you going to do about it? And there were multiple people that were like, I'm so glad I sat next to you. I was in such a bad mood and you've completely turned my night around. I'm just going to and I'm like, well, I'm glad I could be here because I was in that place for days. So I just got to the mental place that this is going to be okay. Like, even if I have to go back, it's literally not the worst thing in the world. My flight boards, they find a flight attendant. I get on the flight. I'm like, I don't believe you until the wheels are on the ground. I do not believe you. Wheels go up. I cried the whole flight, like just like weeping. Like I couldn't stop because I was like, and like I'm sure everyone around me is like, this girl is trashed and just crying. But I'm like, no, they don't, like not everyone probably waited as like, or maybe they did. But when I landed in Kansas City is when I realized how bad the crisis was. There were hundreds of bags. And I mean hundreds. This was the old KC airport, right? So like when you went to the bag carousel, you couldn't get near it because they just had hundreds of bags of people that didn't make it back, but bags did, just stranded. Like true zoo, everyone who was getting on the parking spot bus with me was like, I've been waiting for my flight for an hour. I guess I'm not going to leave. So like everybody was and you're like, oh, it felt so like personalized and attacking when you're like feeling sorry for yourself. And then you're like, oh, this was just like a nationwide outage. And they gave you all the points and they did all the things right when they like cleaned it up. I got reimbursed for my first class experience, almost flown first class, you guys. One day. But the best part about this is to like finally get home. So I go back to Chicago, like almost a year later. I plan to go out to dinner with my second family on my last night. I get one of the most insane eye infections of my life while I'm in Chicago, swelling shut to where every single morning I'm like, I think it's just like an irritant, right? Well, each morning I keep waking up with it more and more swollen to where I'm walking around looking like a monster on the streets of Chicago, wearing sunglasses inside. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Can't get out, can't fly home early. It's a Chiefs game. I think the Chiefs were playing like Everyone was flying the other direction so there was no flights. I'm like, what do I do? So I ended up in urgent care in Chicago. Don't know what part of Chicago because I couldn't see it. Sat waiting for did the urgent care visit. And then they were like, oh, we'll call you in your eye ointment. You just got to sit here in the weirdest part of Chicago while this kid got violently ill on the floor next to me. And I was like, so I'd sat there for probably an hour waiting for my prescription. And I was like, you know what? I feel like these people don't know how awful I look. So then I just took my sunglasses off and sat there so they could see my eyes. And my prescription was ready in the next 5 minutes. It was crazy. And I was like, yeah, you guys should look at this too. Look directly at it. Look at this. So the best was, I get my eye cream and immediately go meet these people for dinner. The same family. And it was so funny because I sat down, sunglasses still on, so we can't see. And he's like, at least you're not crying this time. Such a better. I'm like, well,
Just about.
I am. And I took my sunglasses off and they were like, oh, put the back on. So this family has to think that I'm the most mentally unstable person of all time. No. Yes. Thank you, Mark and Jean.
Are you going to
Savior.
go back this Christmas?
No. I want to go back to Chicago so badly. I love the city, but what's going to happen?
Chicago does not love her back.
It doesn't love me back, which is very offensive. But yeah, those are kind of my more two just epic debacles. But I would still stand. I've also had amazing magical trips where everything just goes right. And you're like, what is this gorgeous moment? I turned 23 on a cruise ship in Rhodes, Greece, surrounded by these wonderful, amazing people that I had just met. And it was the one time we were docked until 3 a.m. So got to experience Greek club life. There's also been some just amazing highs that you're like, oh, whoa, this experience is. But then you just have to laugh at the other stuff, right? Crying on the floor of a $1 rent-a-car. You're like, yeah, I'm going to tell this
They
story.
make better podcasts.
They do. Nobody wants to hear about how lucky you are. Oh, you celebrate on a cruise ship? Oh, no.
For my 23rd birthday.
Right? When you're way too poor to be able to afford that and you know that you didn't earn it. They're like, oh, must be a hard life. You're like, well.
Versus,
I
have pennies to get this rental car. Let me try crying.
literally, because I didn't have a single other skill that would have been applicable in that moment. But yeah. There was another time that this one was just hilarious. You're not even mad about it, but a perfume bottle of lavender body spray somehow came. I think they inspected my bag and unscrewed it and didn't screw it back on because at no point would I have unscrewed it. So they unscrewed it and then, unscrewed it, put the cap back on. It leaked. The Ziploc that it was in leaked everywhere. So everything I owned reeked of lavender. It was a full bottle. So I pull up to the hotel room too, the hotel, and I'm dragging all my stuff in. And the man checking me in is gagging, but trying to pretend he's not, because it smells so strong. It smells like gasoline almost. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I said, the bottle of lavender exploded in my bag. He's like, at least it's a nice smell. At least it's a pleasant smell. And I was like, yeah. So when I got to the hotel room too, I literally opened up everything in my bag and anything it had spilt on, I laid my clothes out. And luckily it was one that has a couch and, a bigger hotel room. But then the hallway reeked of lavender every time you walked into the room. And I was positive I was going to get charged for how bad everything smelled of lavender. Everywhere I went, every event, lavender. We went and stayed one night in State College. So my family's all from Pennsylvania. So I was in Pennsylvania and we went to State College one night to watch a Penn State game. And we stayed in my cousin's friend's house, and I had a room, and I'd left all my stuff in the hotel room, but just took a couple things out of that bag to go stay the night. And I had to apologize to the man who hosted us because I was like, I don't think your room's ever going to smell like anything but lavender. He probably is still and this is the lavender room. I don't even remember her name, but she's ruined it. I mean, just choking amounts of lavender on on everything.
If you think that's an ex-girlfriend, that's not.
And it's not. It was a girl that stayed one night in your spare room named Allison, who for some reason reeked of lavender.
There's worse things.
There are way worse things, you know? There are way worse things.
Where's your next adventure?
My next one that I currently have booked is going to a friend's wedding in New Mexico in September. But I want to go somewhere in August because I basically can't travel for 4 months out of the year. Well, really, like also extension season. So September, October is a hard one. So I do as much traveling as I can during the time that I can. So August, I have nothing booked, and I feel like I should go somewhere for at least a weekend.
You
Think I should go to Chicago?
Oh, 1000%. Chicago
You won't have
is.
a blizzard.
Daddy Mark, get ready.
I don't know. I don't want to be struck down by the travel gods.
Tell Mark we're coming, and then bring your lavender scented one.
We can do a live podcast in Chicago.
Literally
Yes. On the river.
on the river.
Maybe it will snow in August.
I
That's
wouldn't.
for us.
With her luck,
I wouldn't put it past us.
kind of think
I know it's always funny too because people are like, "Have you ever considered not traveling, considering all the bad luck you have?" And I'm like, I don't know that that's accurate though because I travel so much. If you like the number of trips that I take,
Here's the account.
the bad things it
The
is.
CPA
I'm such
coming
like a
out.
logical. I'm like, if you look at the statistical graph, really only 4% of my trips turn out with a funny story. The other 96% are
just-
very successful trips.
and too boring to tell stories about.
I know. And also, but this is probably my toxic trait, right? Doing it for the plot. I am 1000% okay with every single crazy story that happens to me, even getting stranded in Chicago for Christmas. If that means I get to actually experience life, right? Like I'd much rather have that than not taking a chance and trying anything.
That's very true.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Missadventures with Allison Mott. Be sure to follow and subscribe and follow me on Instagram and TikTok. If you're looking for an accountant you connect with, go to AMCPA's website and schedule an intro call.